The following is a Spirit Street production.
Man, I am not sure the last time in the Big 12 Conference where the two teams picked at the very top. A lot of people have both of them going to the Big 12 title game or facing off in the quasi-opening weekend of the Big 12 Conference. Look, UCF and TCU played last week, so I understand that was technically the first weekend, but the majority of the conference gets going this Saturday. Man, this is going to be a good game in Stillwater. We got Oklahoma State and Utah today. We are talking to both of them. This is the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
All right, so we got Michelle Bodkin today talking to us about the University of Utah. They got a big game this weekend, Michelle, going to Stillwater, taking on Oklahoma State. Look, I'm going to start off. I think everybody wants to know the answer to this question. So what is going on with Cam Rising, and is he going to play this week?
I think he does play this week. And to be honest, I think if the game against Oklahoma State was last week, he probably would have suited up and played. But it was Utah State, and it was a great opportunity to get your freshman some really valuable reps, see what he can really do, take the handcuffs off, so to speak. Right. And that turned out really well for him. And it gave Cam a little extra time to kind of rest and recover, because it is a long season and you're going to need him. You're going to actually need both of them probably at some point in time. But I do suspect it's Cam Rising this week, and wide receiver Dorian Singer kind of said as much to us yesterday. So That's kind of the direction I'm moving in.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things. It's kind of what you said. Nobody wants to say it out loud, but look, they had an opportunity to rest him last week without taking a bye, and they were able to get by and play well. One thing that I think is going a little bit unnoticed for people around the country, now not with Utah fans, but I think people that around the country that talk about Utah, I don't think they've been talking about the running game enough. Now, I get it. The competition level hasn't been great up to this point, but I still think that Utah's got a really solid running game, something that they can take advantage of this weekend against Oklahoma State, I think.
Yeah, there was some mystery around it. Utah typically has had the last couple of seasons more of a bell cow type running back. They don't really have that this year. The closest thing they do have is a guy by the name of Mekhi Bernard. He's had back-to-back 100-yard rushing games. He's a bit of a smaller guy. He's not probably going to, get the 30 handoffs the way that, say, like Jaquindon Jackson that's now with Arkansas was getting, but he can handle a bit of a load. I think he got about 20 carries last week. Yeah, 17 actually. I just looked at it, and did really well. And he's an interesting guy from the standpoint of he also can line up and play some receiver as well. So you'll see him kind of all over the field. And then there's another kid that's behind him that very similar skill set to him, but faster. And his name is Dijon Stanley. And they've been using him both as a running back and a slot receiver as well. And then I think the guy that they're hoping will eventually turn into that bell cow, bell cow kind of running back is Michael Mitchell. And he probably had his best game last week against Utah State. I believe, 75 yards rushing, so just under 100 yards. So it's coming together, but it was something that I think they went into the season not knowing what it was going to look like.
Right. And that happens, when you lose a running back. It's just sometimes it can be by committee. Sometimes it takes a few games to get built up to what you want it to be. But you know what? Maybe this is what you do. There's a lot of teams out there that use running back by committee. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing or that they're indecisive. It just means, hey, we've got two guys back here that we really trust, and we're going to use them in different ways to put even more stress on another team's defense. I like that approach. Flipping to the other side of the football, Utah's defense, look, I think it's very physical. That's one of the reasons why I thought Utah was such a great fit coming into the Big 12, is because they play Big 12 type of football. They play a physical style of football on both offense and defense. But they got a tough task this week. They do. I mean, look, I know that Ollie Gordon hasn't been the Ollie Gordon of last year. If you talk to Oklahoma State fans, they'll say, well, they're kind of holding back the playbook. They're just running basic plays for him. If you talk to some other people, maybe, what happened in the offseason, maybe it's starting to rear its ugly head and he's not ready. All I know is the guy's a really good running back. Their offensive line is really good. I would imagine that Utah, their first thing on defense is they've got to stop him.
Absolutely. I think what it comes down to is, yes, for whatever reason, and there could be multiple reasons why Ollie Gordon has not performed the way that I think most of us were expecting, but you don't want to be the first team he gets going against either. So I think he is absolutely number one circled, on their list, and it stands to reason. That's just kind of always been Utah's game plan: stop the run and force teams to beat us with your arm. And I think they have the tools to do it. It is going to be a little bit interesting. It does sound like no Kareni Reed this week, and he's kind of the heart and soul of that defense back in that linebacker position, which means that those duties, calling out plays, getting the defensive line lined up correctly for whatever they think is coming from Oklahoma State, probably falls more on Lander Barton, who's also a very, very good linebacker. But he's had a bit of a slow start to the season as well. He hasn't come out of the gate as quickly as I think most of us were expecting him to. So this is going to be a game that, he has to put it all together, because that defensive line is going to be depending on him to get them in the right spot in order to stop Ollie Gordon. And Witt said yesterday during his press conference, we're probably going to have to gang tackle him because he's a big guy and it's going to take a lot to get him down. But they absolutely have the utmost respect for him, and he is number one on what they need to do.
Right. Now, the thing about Oklahoma State this season, though, look, everybody in the Big 12 circles, and Utah is now a part of that. It was always, you stop Oklahoma State. If you can stop them from running the ball, Alan Bowen, give him an opportunity to beat you because we don't think that he can. Well, this season, it's kind of like he's taken that to heart and has really come out like gangbusters and said, look, you guys can load up to stop the run if you want to, but I'm going to throw the ball over your head. And he's been doing it. Now, again, competition level hasn't been great. It's a huge jump when you start talking about Utah versus who they played last week with, Tulsa, or even the week before with Arkansas. So I understand. But Alan Bowman's been playing some pretty good football to start the season, so might present some difficult challenges for Utah this week.
Utah's defensive backfield is relatively young. They have the most experienced guy is Zamaya Vaughn. He's someone that could have left for the NFL last year, chose to come back. He's playing cornerback. So, he's kind of the anchor of the group with the most experience. And then you have a bunch of guys that haven't played a ton, but they've shown a lot of promise. And that is something that I feel like Morgan Scalley knows what he's doing. Sharif Shaw, they know what they're doing. They know who and what they're looking for. Those guys have performed very well, but to your point, also against lesser teams that maybe don't pose as much of a threat. So that's going to be a really interesting matchup, seeing, how oh goodness, I just lost his name now. Bowman does against Utah's defensive backfield.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. That's a big football game. Usually games like this with two teams that a lot of people are picking to be in the Big 12 championship game don't happen in September. It's unbelievable. But it is. That's just the way the season worked out. I actually like it, though. Let's see what we got. Let's start getting some of these really good football games going. Speaking of that, first time that Utah is going to be in Stillwater as part of the Big 12 anyway. I'm imagining that Utah fans are looking forward to this. Look, for the Pac-12, I know they've got some great venues, but a lot of the places were bigger cities. You had your Corvalises and your Eugenes and things of that nature, and I understand that. But for the most part, Pac-12, it was mostly urban settings.
Yeah,
I can tell you Stillwater is the exact opposite of an urban setting. A hostile crowd, and you know how I feel, Michelle. I like hostile. Yes. It's a hostile crowd. It's going to be a fun environment. I'm assuming the Utah fans, the ones that are going to be going, they're excited about this, about getting out there.
I think that probably is the away game that was the most exciting to everybody because it is known for the environment
Right.
and the crowd that it brings. And Utah fans know all about bringing the atmosphere and stuff. So I think they appreciate a good atmosphere. I know that they thoroughly enjoyed Florida and the swamp. I
Right.
think this is going to be kind of right up there for them. It'll be interesting to see how many people show up. I was actually a little surprised that a couple weeks ago we didn't have as many Baylor fans there as I
Right.
was expecting. And I kind of suspect I've looked at ticket prices. I think the travel back and forth is maybe a little expensive, and
Yep.
it might be keeping some people away that would normally go to these things. But I hope a good crowd shows up, and I hope they just take it all in because I think it will be a good time, and it should be a really good game. Top 25 matchup, kind of
Yes.
right out the gate, and two teams that I think have shown a lot, but I don't know that we've necessarily seen everything they have to give. So
Right.
they're going to roll out some of their best stuff for this one.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about because I don't think we've seen hardly anything of what these teams can actually do, and they're kind of gearing up for this game. I know it's an early season game, but I mean, it matters. It absolutely matters. But yeah, I'm excited for Utah to get into this environment. They're going to love it. It is Stillwater is an outstanding environment. And again, I'm not saying they haven't been in one,
Yeah.
especially I'm not saying they don't have one of your own, but I'm just saying Stillwater, if you haven't been there, it's a fun environment, not only to play in, but as a fan to be in, even as an opposing fan, it's a great time. Last question before I get you out of here. How does Utah win this football game?
Well, I think they have to control Ollie Gordon, and I think they have to pressure Bowman into making bad mistakes. I think where the scales maybe tip a little in Utah's favor is, their upper half on the defensive end in the Big 12, whereas Oklahoma State is dead last, at least as of this past week. So I think that's where the balance shifts. And then, of course, Oklahoma State has the home field advantage. So it's what kind of wins out there? Is it Utah's defense getting the better of Oklahoma State's offense? Because I think those are the best matchups for the two teams. And then obviously you have Utah's offense that's pretty good. Though, again, I don't think we've seen everything they can possibly do. And then, of course, going against Oklahoma State's defense that maybe isn't the best, what happens there? And then how does that crowd balance things out? But I think it all starts with Utah's defense putting Oklahoma State's offense in bad positions and making sure that Utah's offense continues to have the ball.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Michelle. We appreciate you for giving us time today to talk about this big time matchup, early season battle of some of the Titans of the Big 12 this season. So we appreciate you giving us some time, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds great, Big B. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. We will be right back on the other side of this. McClain Baxley will be talking to us about the Oklahoma State Cowboys and how they can match up, or how they do match up with Utah Utes.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. Again, this is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. We've got McClain Baxley, who covers Oklahoma State for 24/7 Sports. McClain, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing good. It's a exciting time, big week in Oklahoma, both for the Cowboys and the Sooners. So just excited for Saturday.
Absolutely. My first question is, with Oklahoma State, big game against Utah, I know the fans are ready, but is it weird to have a game of this magnitude this early in the season?
Yeah, I mean, Gundy was asked about it yesterday. He was asked because they play, Utah this week, and then next week they go to Kansas State and Manhattan, and those three teams were picked in the top three to win the Big 12, and so Oklahoma State's getting their two biggest tests right out of the gate. And he's like, I thought I was friends with the commissioner, I was friends with the scheduling people. He thought they were kind of throwing him a bone and give him maybe an easier start. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of there's two schools of thought. One, you get teams while they're fresh, and they don't have as much film about you. They've only seen 3 games against 3 very different opponents for Oklahoma State, and or you don't want to see them at the end of the season. They've had 10 games to kind of get better and fully form into their offense and defensive plans. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big 2 weeks here. It's kind of funny. I mean, by October, we'll know exactly what Oklahoma State is. They'll have played their non-conference, and they'll have played 2 top 20 teams, and probably 2 of the 3 teams that will be competing for that Big 12 championship. So, 2 weeks from today, we'll know exactly what to make of Oklahoma State and their postseason plans.
Absolutely. Speaking of Oklahoma State, when people look from the outside looking in, the first thing that comes to mind, obviously Mike Gundy, but then they talk about Ollie Gordon in this running game. And it hasn't really been the Ollie Gordon show so far this season like it was last season. 2 things, a train of thought with that. Number one, teams are just literally saying Ollie Gordon's not going to beat us. No matter what you do, he's not going to beat us. We're not going to let this running game beat us. Or number 2, and this is kind of my train of thought, is that Mike Gundy, the Oklahoma State staff, has just not shown everything that they want to show with Ollie Gordon, knowing what they have coming up with conference play right off the bat.
I think both schools of thoughts are definitely in play. I mean, on the one hand, like you said, teams are loading the box. We saw Saturday in Tulsa that they had 6 or 7 guys in the box the entire game. They were kind of hoping that with Alan Bowman, having a strong game, hitting his receivers, that they would kind of loosen up and provide, holes and kind of loosen up and let them run more. But that didn't happen. Gundy said there's only 4 plays throughout the entire game Saturday that they didn't have an extra man in the box. And that's going to be the strategy going forward. Teams are going to make Alan Bowman throw you, because you can say, I would trust Ollie Gordon to have a better game than I would Alan Bowman, just because we saw what happened last year. So teams are going to sell out. They're going to stop Ollie Gordon and make Bowman make the throws before they consider not loading the box. And then the other point is how you were saying that they're kind of saving things, maybe running things a little bit vanilla through non-conference play. So when they get to Utah and K-State, they've got a full new scheme. And I think that could be the case, but it's not like they're not getting the ball to Ollie Gordon. Last year Gordon broke out in Big 12 play because he'd only had 19 carries in non-conference play. He had 17 carries alone against Tulsa and only had 42 yards. He's averaging 3.2 yards a carry, which is about half what he was doing last year. Last year he was around 6.1 through the 14-game schedule. So I'm not as buying that theory that they're kind of saving things. They're going to change this massive change from Saturday against Tulsa to Saturday against Utah. But it is something I think Mike Gundy said he's not concerned. The players seem calm about it, but I think fans and media alike are definitely a little bit concerned about what they're going to see Saturday and moving forward into Big 12 play with the run game.
Well, the one thing, and you mentioned it, McClain, is that, teams are loading the box. Alan Bowman's they're basically saying, Alan Bowman, you got to show us that you can beat us. Well, he's done that through the first 3 games. I mean, he has come out, and it seems like he's kind of taking it personal because, look, he's like everybody else. He hears what people have been saying about him. He understands that. And that's kind of the mantra out there is that we got to see him beat us. Well, he's done that. Talk a little bit about how his progression from last year to this year has changed him as a quarterback.
Yeah, 2 things stand out. One is just the comfortability, having a full year, full offseason, knowing you are the guy. After the 3 quarterback rotation to start last season, now having a full season of taking reps with the ones on the offensive line, taking reps with the ones at receiver, tight end, everything is your offense. And so just being comfortable in there, and then also just being smarter about the ball. Last year we saw him flush out of the pocket, either escape and try to run, or he would throw the ball away too quickly without going through his reads and just trusting his linemen. This year, he's being a lot smarter about not throwing the ball away, not taking a sack. They've allowed 0 sacks through 3 games this year. And so just being smarter with the ball and really just kind of trusting himself. I mean, he's a veteran guy. He's played a lot of football at the Division I, at the Power 5 level. And he's kind of showing that he knows that. He's able to read defenses. He's able to trust his guys, and it's worked out. I mean, they've had we've talked all preseason and offseason about how this receiver core is one of the best in the country, with Rashad Owens, DeJon Stribling, and Brendan Presley. And they've all had good games this year, and especially Stribling on Saturday, going for 174 and 2 touchdowns, kind of his breakout game, his first big game since transferring last offseason from Washington State. So it's been cool to see, like you said, kind of proving the doubters wrong. Obviously, these next 2 weeks are a bigger test than anything they've seen yet. I mean, I think probably Arkansas is the most talented team and biggest threat defensively for Bowman in the offense. But so far, he's done his job perfectly. Knowing that Gordon's going to get blocked, knowing that the teams are going to be targeting the All-American running back, and so he's kind of stepped up and taken it and done well.
Gotcha. Flipping it over to the other side of the ball, the defense. Any concerns as far as the defense is going this year? I mean, they've given up some yards here. Don't have the greatest statistics moving forward. But is there any concern right now in Stillwater about this Oklahoma State defense?
I think the jury's still out. Last week was their first week without Colin Oliver for a full game. He got injured in the first half against Arkansas. I mean, all 4-time All-Conference Player of the Year, or not Player of the Year, All-Conference guy, just their best defender, and has been for 2-3 years now. He's out for the season, and so, or likely out for the season. And so we saw that we got our first chance to see what that looks like, and it's kind of a step up by committee. There's no one guy that can do what Colin Oliver does, and so having 2 or 3 veteran guys that can get to the quarterback, that can play in pass coverage, that can play in the middle of the field like a linebacker, they looked good. I think that first drive, Tulsa had a couple big runs that set them down the field, got them down to the Oklahoma State 27, and they missed a field goal. And really after that drive, they definitely made some adjustments and shut Tulsa down for the rest of the game until the backups went in late in the fourth quarter. So Nardo has done a good job of adjusting in game. Last week it was after the first quarter, or towards the end of the first quarter, they made the adjustments. Against Arkansas, it was at halftime. A lot of adjustments were made, and kind of changing the narrative of that game, and engineering that comeback the second half. And so Nardo's done that a lot in his first 17 games at Oklahoma State, and I think it's going to be something that he's going to have to continue. And I know Oklahoma State fans would love for him to just be able to not make those adjustments because everything's working well in the first quarter. But he's gotten beat in the first half of a lot of games, and has found a way to make the changes necessary. And so it'll be a big test Saturday against Utah. Versatile. They've got a good quarterback. They've got pretty good running game, and they're pretty balanced. And so it's going to be a test. And again, that means a lot for Oklahoma State.
Well, you just mentioned it, McClain, that they're pretty balanced. I mean, Utah and Oklahoma State are kind of carbon copies of each other. Balanced offense. They want to get after you. Coaches have been at their respective schools for a long time. They play a physical style of football, or at least they want to play a physical style of football. This is a pretty evenly matched game. Saying all of that, how does Oklahoma State, what are the keys for them to be able to win this game?
It is crazy how similar these programs are. I mean, both Kyle Whittingham and Mike Gundy, this is their 20th season at their school. At the same school. I think Mike Gundy has 3 more wins than Whittingham overall. Like even their records are so similar. But yeah, I mean, Saturday is gonna be huge. I mean, I think one factor is the home crowd. I think they do very well playing in Boone Pickens Stadium. Mike Gundy is 9-1 since 2016 as a home underdog. Most of those games are against ranked teams. But then on the field, I mean, I think it's going to come down to the defense being able to stop Utah. Utah hasn't had a huge explosive game yet this season. And then Cam Rising's been hurt. How does he look? I think he's gonna be the starter on Saturday. Whether that's been super official or not, I think he's gonna play on Saturday, and they're gonna give it a go after missing last week against Utah State. So I think it's gonna be up to Oklahoma State's defense to really show that they're better, because I think the offense is gonna do their job. I think it's gonna be a consistent thing week in and week out, is that whether it's through the passing game or through the run game, Oklahoma State's going to score points and get their team in position to win. It's now on the defense to make sure that they don't need to score 50 points a game to win these games, like we saw against Arkansas a few weeks ago, scoring 38 points after being down by 20 in the first half. So I think it's going to be on the defense to really step up and just kind of limit Cam Rising's arm and limit that run game, and get the opportunity to their offense to make plays.
Gotcha. I understand exactly what you're talking about as far as the defense, because while you can win a couple of games like that, it's not sustainable. Giving up that many yards and that many points, especially against good competition, because while Arkansas, I think, is a little better than what maybe people think, Utah is better than they are. So I totally understand. Well, thank you, McClain, again, for giving us your time today, man. We appreciate you coming on as much as you do, man. We really do appreciate that at Big 12 Insiders. We'll have you back as many times as you want to come back, so we appreciate it.
Absolutely. It should be a fun game Saturday.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.